Hello, my name is Keith, and these are my stamps. Today it's episode 9 Alexandria and Port Said, also known as the French post offices in Egypt. Alexandria and Port Said are both in Egypt on the north coast in northeast Africa. Alexandria was founded and named by Alexander the Great. He didn't have to go far to find the name. Port Said, however, was named by an international committee made up of representatives from Britain, France, the Russian Empire, Austria, Spain, and Piedmont. They chose the name Port Said, port, because it's a port, and Said named after the ruler of Egypt at the time, Mohammed Said Pasha. Alexandria is on the western part of the Nile Delta. It's on the Mediterranean coast, the largest city, in fact, on the Mediterranean, and the second largest city in Egypt. It has a population of about 5.5 million, which is more or less the population of Norway. Port Said is on the west bank of the Suez Canal and also on the Med, and it has a population of roughly 700,000, which is similar to Washington, D.C. or Bristol. As mentioned, Alexandria was founded by Alexander the Great in 331 BC, named as Alexandria near Egypt, because Egypt at that stage was just based around the Nile near present day Cairo. After Alexander's death in 323 BC, Ptolemy Lagides took possession. He later declared himself Pharaoh of Egypt and extended Egypt's borders and included Alexandria in the new Egypt and made Alexandria the capital. When Ptolemy's son took over, the famed Library of Alexandria was built. 48 BC, Julius Caesar's siege of Alexandria, and eventually it came under Roman control with Augustus. In 619 AD, it fell to the Sassanid Persians. In 629, to the Byzantine Empire. 641 fell to the Arabs in the Muslim conquest of Egypt. In the 13th and 14th centuries, it grew in importance as a port, with trade from Arabia, things like incense, trade from Southeast Asia, spices like pepper, cloves, cinnamon, also precious stones and woods, and from south in Africa, ivory particularly and wood. These goods passed via Aden to the Red Sea, across the land, and then up the Nile to Alexandria. And from there, it spread out across the Mediterranean. In the 15th century, the Portuguese discovered the new trade routes to India, and that reduced Alexandria's importance. In 1517, Alexandria and Egypt fell to the Ottoman Turks. 1798, Napoleon's troops entered the city. 1801, the British beat the French at the Battle of Alexandria and incidentally acquired the Rosetta Stone in the process, taking it back to the British Museum. And after that battle, Egypt reverted to Ottoman control. In 1859, Port Said was founded during the building of the Suez Canal. In 1869, the Suez Canal was completed with French assistance. The Egyptian leader at the time sold Egypt's shares to Britain, and both France and Britain had quite extensive influence over Egypt for the next few decades. And it led to both Alexandria and Port Said becoming known as multinational, multicultural cities. And this lasted well until after World War II and even into the 50s. Since then, they have become Egyptian cities. The stamp issuing history. There's generally two reasons for a country to have its own post offices in another country. The first is due to mistrust or a lack of an actual local postal service. And the second reason is occupation during wartime. The first scenario was common at the end of the 19th century and start of the 20th century. And several European powers had post offices in cities around the world, mostly in the Middle and Far East. These were arranged by treaties with the countries where the cities were found. France opened post offices in Egypt, in Alexandria, Cairo, Port Said, and Suez. And initially, French stamps were used from all four of these post offices. In 1899, stamps were officially overprinted with the post office name. However, both Cairo and Suez post offices had closed by then, so it was only Alexandria and Port Said that had French stamps overprinted with their names. From 1900 to 1902, French designs were used, but with the actual post office name there instead of France. In 1921 to 24, the French currency was surcharged in Egyptian currency. This continued in 1925, but with the addition of actual bars over the French currency. And from 1927-28, the same designs were used, but this time with actual Egyptian currency. Both post offices in Alexandria and Port Said were closed in 1931. So the currencies used until 1921, it was the French currency, 100 cents, making 1 franc. Then the Egyptian currency of 10 millièmes, making 1 piastre, and 100 piastres, making a pound. Stamps of the French post offices overseas at this time used the classic French stamps, and as this is the first time I've come across them in my episodes, I'm going to go into a slight bit of detail about them. This first one is from the Peace and Commerce style stamp. In France, they're known by the name of the designers. So this is the Sage type, named after the designer Jules Auguste Sage. And you can see his name just about down in the bottom left corner. In the right-hand corner is the name of the engraver of this stamp, Louis-Eugène Mouchon, whose name will come back. So this is a regular French issued stamp overprinted with Alexandrie, or the French for Alexandria, and the 1 is 1 cent. This is issued in 1899. The next group of stamps show the replacements for the Sage type. In 1900, France replaced that stamp with 3 designs, named again for the designers, Blanc, Mouchon, and Merson. The Blanc type, designed by Joseph Blanc with the engraver Émile Thomas, shows liberty, holding the scales of equality, and fraternity is symbolized by 2 cherubs having a cuddle in the left-hand side. This type was used for the lower values, here the 1 cent and 4 cents. Mid values were the Mouchon type, the engraver from the Sage type we saw earlier. This shows a female allegory of the Republic holding a tablet inscribed Rights of Humanity. The first issue of this type had a rectangular denomination cartouche, but this was replaced in 1902 by this one, the shield shape. Here, the 20 and 25 cents are shown. The third new type was the Merson, designed by Luc Olivier Merson, engraved pretty much all by Auguste Thevenin. And again, we have the allegory of the Republic. Here she's seated guarding the peace, and this one is the 50 cents. All of these are inscribed with Alexandria rather than being overprinted. Interesting, the cancellation in the 4-cent one at the top in the middle, you can clearly see London, but there is a cancellation underneath which, after a little bit of studying, it does show Egypt, as you can see on the 1-cent upside down written Egypt, and the others you can see either some letters from Egypt or Alexandria. The 1-cent was issued in 1921. There was a different version from 1902 when the other 4 were issued, but this one was a later version in 1921. Next, we have the surcharged versions, and there were 2 types. They're all surcharged with Egyptian currency on the face values of the French currency. At the top is the 15 mille for milliemes on the 2 cents blanc type, and the surcharge is in 1 line. The lower 2 stamps have the surcharge in 2 lines. And all of these come from 1921. The next set, also surcharged, but this time they have 3 bars obliterating the French currency. And again, all the surcharges are in 2 lines. These ones from 1925. These are the 3 stamps that I have from Port Said. On the left, we have a Mouchon type from 1902, quite clearly postmarked Port Said and Egypt. Then we have 2 stamps which have been surcharged in 2 lines, both from 1921. And you'll notice that the second and the third stamps are perfin as well. And both have the same perfin. Here I've held it up to the light, and you can clearly see it's a C and an N. This stood for the Comptoir National des Comptes de Paris. Bit of a mouthful. It's a bank based in Paris, but they were allowed to open offices overseas, and the Port Said branch opened in 1909. And that particular bank, the Comptoir National des Comptes de Paris, was active until 1966, when it merged with another bank to form the Banque Nationale de Paris, or the BNP, which is still going. I used a website which I believe is from Lithuania, so I'm not going to attempt to read it, but I'll put that in the description. I keep perfin stamps in my main collection until and unless I get a stamp that is non-perfined, the same stamp, then I put the perfin in a separate collection. So they are in my main collection until I get a replacement, but I keep them there. So, my name is Keith, and these are my stamps. Goodbye.